Story number 1. After a month straight of nagging and bragging, my best friend finally convinced me to create a Tinder account. It'd be another 2 or 3 weeks though before I'd actually set up my profile. For reasons my friend couldn't understand, I wasn't in a rush to become a participant in the online dating circuit. The first and most obvious reason was because at the time, I had a girlfriend. My other remaining hangups with joining dating sites were the fact that I'm an 80s baby who came up during a time where the only people you dated were people you knew personally or that you were introduced to by people you knew. We used to call those blind dates or being fixed up, but with the way shit is today with the internet, dating now is like walking into a pitch black room. You don't know what the hell you're getting yourself into, which was actually my third and final reason for being so reluctant. But after seeing the quality of fine random women my friend would constantly brag about hooking up with through Tinder, I found myself a bit envious. Don't get me wrong, there were some ugly ducklings in the mix, along with a few questionables that had stronger jawlines than me. But all in all, he was getting legit action while I was spending more and more of my quality time alone with the hub. So one day while I was at the gym with my buddy, he finally convinced me to take the ultimate leap and finish setting up my profile. I avoided linking my account through Facebook for obvious embarrassment and privacy reasons, and I filled my bio in the long way. I uploaded my best picture and added the distance I'd be willing to travel to meet women. From there, my friend suggested that I pay for a profile boost to make myself more visible. I did, and to my total surprise, within minutes, I was getting likes. As we were heading out of the gym, my phone dinged, and when I checked it, there was a notification from the Tinder app letting me know that I had gotten a super like. I didn't know what that was at first, but when my friend eagerly told me, I was equally flattered and excited. But when we both saw the picture of the woman who super liked me, I found myself mesmerized, while my buddy found himself a tad jealous of my good fortune. By the time we made it to our cars, he convinced me that I should try to meet up with her. I felt that was a bit forward, but he insisted that that was the Tinder norm. So I did, and within minutes she responded saying she loved to meet. I immediately thought of meeting at a coffee shop, but then my friend popped me on the side of the head and asked me if I was crazy. He told me that anyone who super liked her picture wasn't interested in having a coffee or an enlightened conversation. She was interested in me. That's when he suggested that I meet her at a hotel. I found that to be extremely forward and possibly insulting to the attractive young woman. That's when my friend showed me that his time on Tinder had turned him into a real wolf. He explained that the hotel he recommended had a restaurant and a bar inside. That way we could subtly start off with dinner, and as our conversation progressed, we could either have drinks at the bar or skip the bar altogether and go straight to getting a room. It was a deceptive, devious plan, but nevertheless, I liked it. I thought it was brilliant. I sent her the location and I was surprised that she readily agreed. The plan was set and the wheels were in motion. By 7 o'clock that night, I was joking and laughing with the beautiful woman I met through Tinder over drinks. We enjoyed each other's company for nearly 2 hours, and I have to say, I really found myself addicted to her personality, her bubbling energy, and her magnetic smile. I could feel myself developing my own cheesy grin when she asked me if I wanted to get a room. Of course I said yes, and within minutes we were on our drunken way up to the 3rd floor. Things were going better than I ever could have hoped for. When we made it into our room, she excused herself to the bathroom but instructed me to wait for her on the bed. I did, and maybe a minute or so later there was a knock on the door. I got up from the bed and prepared to answer it, but then she suddenly emerged from the bathroom and began opening the door without ever checking to see who it was. I thought that was odd and incredibly reckless, but before I could say anything, she was walking out of the room, and 2 huge, mean-ass looking dudes covered in tattoos stepped in. I knew right then and there that this had all been a setup. I could feel my heart beating through my chest and a lump of fear form in the back of my throat as the 2 hulking men menacingly approached me. I was thankful that that night ended with me only being robbed of my money, jewelry, cell phone, and eventually my dignity when I had to explain to the maid and then the cops the next day why I was helplessly tied to the bed wearing only my boxers. That aside, at least I wasn't deprived of my manhood. If you've ever seen the show Oz, you know exactly what I mean. This unfortunate event has taught me a valuable lesson though. I'm officially withdrawing from the online dating scene. I'm not going to risk this shit happening to me again. I might not be as lucky the next time. Who knows? The next time I might actually have to explain the shit to my wife. Story 2. Have you ever been on Facebook and rediscovered that one person you once had a crush on back when you were in school but hadn't seen in forever? You find yourself in total awe because that person looks just as attractive now as they did back then, if not more so. You go into their profile, and if you're lucky, their page isn't blocked, And after you've checked their relationship status and verified that they're single, you spend the next 5 or so minutes scrolling through their photos, gawking and smiling like a stalker in training. Once you've had your fill of that, you finally take that first big move and send them a friend request, along with a message that's friendly enough but still has a hint of flirtation in it, but not so much that it makes things weird. Now comes the waiting game, which is the most nerve-wracking part. Will they respond? Do they even care to respond? Are they even still active on their page? These are the most prevalent questions that plague you as you constantly check your phone for notifications. All of that becomes a distant memory once they respond, and their words exude a certain degree of excitement. From there it begins. You see, I've been that person, and the story I'm about to tell you is the reason why I'll never be that person again. And maybe, just maybe, I can help prevent you from becoming that person too, if you haven't been that person already. His name was Michael Branston, and he was my high school crush. But unfortunately for me, back in high school he didn't even know I was alive. Or at least that's what I thought up until he messaged me back 2 days after I found him on Facebook. I was pleasantly surprised by how well he remembered me. Though we never really spoke back in school, he told me that he used to check me out all the time, and the only reason he claimed he never spoke to me was because I always looked angry. At first I thought he was just telling me everything I wanted to hear, but when he started to bring up certain details, like how I wore my hair, or certain outfits I wore, or the one time my locker was jammed and he helped me open it, I knew that he genuinely remembered me. We exchanged numbers online and were talking on the phone by the end of the night. By the next day we were making plans to go out on a date that Friday. As a safety precaution, I usually never gave my address to someone I just started dating, but since I knew Michael, I made an exception. He picked me up in his beautiful orange and black Challenger and took me out to an extravagant restaurant where we caught up on the past 12 years as we enjoyed a delicious cuisine and sipped expensive champagne. From there, we strolled along the lakefront, talking about whatever interested us, making jokes and laughing. We had a great time. At the end of the night, he remained a perfect gentleman, walking me up to my door and placing a soft kiss on my forehead before telling me goodnight. He didn't try to weasel his way into my bedroom, and he didn't try to invite himself into my house hoping he'd get lucky. But to be totally honest, I had such a fun time with him, I don't think I would have minded if he did. As days turned into weeks, we continued talking, texting and going out regularly. All the while, he maintained a gentleman status, never once tried to make a move on me. He never even suggested it. What he did finally suggest, though, was something I never quite anticipated. While we were talking on the phone one day, out of the blue, he asked me if I'd be willing to meet his mother. I was flattered by the offer because I knew how much his mother meant to him. He told me all about how she helped him recover from his depression after his dad passed away and how his father's death strengthened their bond. Just through the countless conversations we've had over the past month, I was able to determine that he truly loved and respected his mother. And maybe that's what this was all about. Maybe he wanted to take our budding relationship to the next step, but needed his mother to give me the seal of approval first. I know that makes him a bit of a mama's boy, but I didn't mind that. In fact, it was a welcome change up from all the rude good-for-nothings I dated in the past. A part of me wanted to congratulate her for raising a true gentleman in this day and age, while the other part of me wanted her to stamp me with that seal of approval. So I agreed to meet her. 3 days after I agreed to meet his mother, it was another Saturday evening and we had plans to go out yet again. But before we go out on our date, we would swing by his house so I could meet his mother. He told me that after his dad died, his mother spent a couple years living on her own, but when she got sick, he insisted that she moved in with him so he could take care of her. I remember thinking to myself how sweet that was. This was the first time I'd ever been inside his house, but I was immediately impressed. It was a large, beautiful home with a modern-day decor that looked like it had been professionally designed. He called out to his mother as we stepped into the living room, but there was no response. Michael said she was probably up in her room watching TV. He told me to make myself at home while he went up to go get her. I sat down on the sofa and waited anxiously to meet the woman who could probably play a decisive role in determining my future. If she gave me the green light, I could very well be on my way to becoming Mrs. Zoe Branston. God, that's got a great ring to it. My palms grew sweaty thinking about how badly I needed to make the right impression on her. Michael was too perfect of a catch to lose just because his mother gave me a thumbs down. I made the decision right there on that leather couch that I was going to woo the hell out of this lady and leave no doubt in her mind that I was the best and only candidate to be considered as her potential daughter-in-law. Suddenly I heard footsteps coming down the stairs. I rose to my feet and donned a nervous smile as I prepared to introduce myself. I could feel my smile suddenly fade away and my eyes widen in total disbelief as I desperately tried to comprehend what I was seeing. Standing before me at the foot of the stairs was Michael, only he was wearing an old black dress and wearing a wig of long gray hair. I told myself this had to be some kind of a joke, and I even remember smirking at the time because I thought that was the case. But when he began speaking to me in the creepy voice of a woman, I got the frightening sensation that he was dead serious. What he said to me only confirmed my suspicions and heightened my fear. He said, "You must be Zoe. Michael's told me so much about you. Can I get you something to eat or drink?" I was so shocked by this unexpected situation, I found myself unable to speak or move. He then said to me, "Silly me, of course you don't want anything. I forgot you two were going out tonight. Last thing you want to do is ruin your appetite. Please, have a seat, sweetheart." I finally forced myself to say, "Are you serious right now? What are you doing?" "Is there a problem, dear?" he asked. "Are you all right? You look troubled. Is there anything I can do for you?" Finally coming to grips with what was going on, I asked, "So you're Mrs. Branston?" He nodded and smiled. I then said, "Okay, may I ask where Michael is? I'd like to talk to him right now." She answered, "Oh, my cable box is on the fritz again, and he's talking with the cable company trying to fix it. Could be a little while before it's done. Gives us a chance to get some girl talk in." A chilling mixed expression of an icy stare and a warm smile appeared on his face as he added, "You can tell me all about how you're out to steal my baby boy from me." Strangely, I suddenly found myself on the defensive. "I'm not trying to steal your boy." "Sure you are," he smiled, inching towards me. "You're not the first woman to try and take my son away from me, but you are the first one he's talked my ear off about. I know all the signs of love, sweetie. I know all the cures too." I didn't know what that meant, but the way he said it felt very threatening. The creepiness in the air grew so thick I could barely breathe. I said, "You know, maybe I should be going. I'm not feeling too good." "Oh no, that's not good. You want me to go and get Michael for you?" I said, "No, I'm fine. I don't want to get in between you two. I can manage on my own. I'll just call somebody and have them come and pick me up." His face suddenly went frighteningly solemn as he eerily asked me, "Call somebody? Let me ask you, dear, does anyone know exactly where you are right now? Friends? Parents? Anybody at all?" The best and only way to describe the scene in that living room at that precise moment would be to compare it to the movie Psycho, when Norman Bates snapped and tried to attack the woman at the end of the movie. A numbing chill surged up my spine, and it didn't help that creepy-ass music from Psycho was playing in my head. I knew without doubt that she was looking to gauge if I would be missed or not, or if I were to go missing, would anybody know to come here looking for me. Truth be told, none of my friends or family members knew where I was, but I sure as hell wasn't about to let him know that. As I inched my way past him, moving towards the door, I said, "Yeah, pretty much everyone I know knows because I posted where I'd be going tonight on my Facebook page, and I texted my mother so she'd know in case she needed to reach me." That was about the last bit of small talk I cared to make. As I tried to conceal the fact that I was lying through my teeth, I was also slyly reaching for the doorknob. As soon as my hand touched it, I gave it a quick twist and was out the door and power walking away from that house like my life depended on it. I slammed the door shut behind me without saying another word to Michael, not even a goodbye. I pulled out my phone just in case I needed to call the police if he decided to chase after me. I zigged and zagged between different blocks trying to make sure he couldn't find me easily. Once I felt I was a safe enough distance away, I called for an Uber. Within an hour's time, I'd be back at home and still shaking as a result of nervous energy. I called my best friend and told her all about what happened. As we talked, I got several messages and phone calls from Michael, all of which I ignored. I got on my computer and went onto the Verizon website and changed my cell number that night. The idea then hit me to head over to Facebook and deactivate my account. I later opened up a whole new account under a false name, and one of my first orders of business was to make sure that I blocked him from my new profile. Since Michael knew where I lived, I no longer felt safe in my home. So to further disassociate myself from him, I moved in with my parents until I was able to find another place. It took a couple of months, but I eventually found something on the outskirts of town. Once I felt like I reestablished some degree of personal security, I started digging around on the internet and discovered conclusively just how unstable Michael really was. It turns out his mother died 5 years ago, 4 years after his father passed away. Now, I'm no therapist, but I'm assuming Michael must have had a mental break after losing his last remaining parent. Unable to say goodbye to the woman who became so important to him after his father's death, Michael must have developed split personality disorder to keep her with him. Like I said, I'm no doctor, so don't quote me on that, but I know what I saw in his eyes that night, and that's the only thing I can come up with to explain it. 8 months had gone by since that freaky night, and I had my fair share of nightmares during that stretch. But as time went on, Michael and his craziness gradually faded into a distant memory. Given a little more time, I might have actually forgotten about him altogether, but any hopes of that happening were dashed the second I saw Michael's mugshot plastered on my TV screen. It was a news report about how he'd been arrested for the murder of a young woman he'd been dating. Apparently, she just up and disappeared one day. Police traced her last known whereabouts back to Michael. They found evidence that she had been attacked in his living room and soon discovered her body in a deep freezer in his basement. The reporter said that was all the information authorities were willing to divulge, but I knew the whole truth regardless of what they were willing to release. I know for certain that young woman met the same fate I barely escaped. She was only 29 years old. Whatever peace I thought I would eventually find was completely shattered at that point. I had been so busy trying to forget about that night, I totally ignored the fact that the next unfortunate woman to find herself in that position might not be as lucky. I was so preoccupied with putting distance between myself and Michael, I never considered all those who might have been falling prey to his charming ways, and as a result, began cozying up to him. My old nightmares have been replaced with all new ones. I went online and searched the victim's name and pulled up her picture. She was so young, so happy, so beautiful. I stared at her picture until it was burned into my memory. That image is with me every day now. All I see whenever I close my eyes, or find myself daydreaming, or even when I look into the mirror, is her face twisting in pure horror the instant Michael attacked her, wearing that gray-haired wig and long black dress. The sad truth of the matter is I could have saved that young woman from her untimely death had I only come forward and gotten Michael the help he so desperately needed. But instead, I chose to only think of myself. That troubling fact will haunt me for the rest of my life. And maybe that's exactly what I deserve.